Good morning, everyone. The joys of hosting at home. All right, wait about 30 more seconds, and then we will start. Okay, I think we are ready to begin. So good morning, everyone. My name is Miles Glancy. I'm the General Manager of Philharmonia Baroque Orchestra and Chorale. And I'd like to welcome all of you to the first program of our musical exploration series, A Dué with Katherine Kyme and William Skeen. Thank you so much for continuing to support our organization and the content we produce, especially at a time when we can't connect with you in the concert halls. Before we begin, I wanted to go through a few bits of housekeeping for you all who are joining us, especially those who have never used the Zoom webinar platform before. First of all, your video camera and microphone are disabled throughout this event, so we're unable to see you or hear you. At the bottom of your screen, you'll find a Q&A tab. And if you click on this tab, you're able to type and submit questions to Bill and Kati. And there is also a send anonymous option if you'd prefer that. These questions will be reviewed by myself throughout the event, and at the end we'll choose a few for Bill and Kati to answer live. If you need any assistance at any time, you can use the chat feature, which is also down at the bottom of your screen, or you can email us at info@philharmonia.org. I must remind you all that with any live streamed event, we may experience some connectivity issues and sound or video blips, and we apologize in advance if that does happen, and we thank you for your patience. Now it's my honor to introduce the hosts for this event, PBO orchestra members Kati Kyme on violin and Bill Skeen on cello. Yay!
Good morning, everybody. We have a varied program today, starting with early Baroque composer Marco Uccellini, and then our favorite Bach, and then some Mozart, and we'll finish with Beethoven. So we're spanning quite a number of years with 4 different instruments and many different bows. So it's a little bit of a show and tell as well as a musical feast. Starting with Uccellini, this is, what's the name of it again?
Oh, La Luciminia.
The Sonata Luciminia. And Uccellini was famous for being head of the music at the Este Court in Modena. And he is noted for his chromaticism and his blue notes, otherwise called false relation.
We're going to be using a variety of bows today, and of course, there are 2 different instruments that each of us will play. For the first piece, since it's such an early piece from about 1630 or 40, I have my 1680 5-string cello, very unusual instrument.
And I have what's called a pre-Italian violin. I think that was just a joke.
Well, Italy's been around a while.
Yeah, it's true. I don't think it's pre-Italian, but it is an old instrument.
And I also have, we both have these very short, pointy sticked bows. I'll do some comparisons later.
Dagger bows.
Yeah, so these have a very strong attack, but they don't blossom very much in the dynamic. One of the unique features of these bows is that they don't have a screw mechanism to tighten them like the modern style or even the late 18th century styles. So you have to actually put the frog in by hand and tighten it with little strips of leather and paper. So as you heard, that piece required a lot of very quick playing from Kati, lots of back and forth notes, really quick, and so it sort of requires this very agile short bow that can quickly, facilitate all these motions. As we get to the early 18th century, we start to have music that's a little bit more lyrical, and but still quick, still requiring lots of quick articulation changes. So the bow's adapted a little bit. So we go from this short pointy bow to a little bit more convex, a little bit longer cello bow. And since I have the 5-string cello with me, I'm going to go ahead and play a little bit of Bach for you. Bach loved the 5-string cello. This particular instrument, in case you're wondering, is from about 1680, so just around the time Bach was born. He wrote these 6 cello suites around 1720, and so I have a bow that's a copy of one from about 1710 or so. So this is by Louis Béjean, in case you're wondering. And since I spent the last few weeks recording all these suites, I finally had time during the pandemic. I kind of have this in my fingers from this week. This is the jig from the last suite, which calls for the 5-string cello, or some sort of 5-string instrument. As far as I'm concerned, it's a cello. Some people think otherwise, but so let's just hear a little bit of this. I'll play with the repeats too. I add some ornamentation second time. I could have mentioned this, but before, but each of these pieces would probably be played also at a different pitch level. The time and place of the uccellini was in Italy in the early 17th century. So the pitch was probably A, or tuning A would equal 465 or something like that. But in order to do that today, we couldn't possibly play the other music in the correct pitch level. So, and plus our strings would probably pop at 465. You need new strings for that. So let's say the uccellini was really high, another step higher. When you get to Bach, it's more around 400 to 415. So I'm going to use the standard of A415, which is what we basically use for all of Philharmonia's Baroque concerts. You want to say something about our next piece?
Yeah, our next piece is the final movement of Mozart's first G major duo, originally written for violin and viola. It's K423. He also transcribed it for cello, happily, so we're going to do the violin and cello version. And it was written in 1783. It was published by Artaria in Vienna. It's very popular and lots of fun. Bill's going to switch instruments now, and bows. We both have switched bows, actually, as a matter of fact, instruments as well. I'm using my classical instrument now, my classical bow, which is another Louis Bégin wonder. Thank you.
Yeah, and if I could own every instrument in the world, I would have everything for every occasion, but this is what I just call my big cello. This has been in the Philharmonia family since day one, literally. One of our founding cellists, Elizabeth Le Guin, owned this cello. And it's had lived its life once as a Grancino. Who knows what it really is? But it sounds like one. And it's just a normal four-string cello from about 1725 or so. So, you know, I guess you could always play later music on earlier instruments, but you shouldn't play earlier music on later instruments when possible. Again, I'm going to switch bows myself. This is a sort of a mid-18th century bow, highly decorated. Just like the people were, the men would wear, these crazy perukes, these wigs, and the ladies would dress quite finely with all kinds of ornamental dress. So were the bows, many of them anyway. So the difference with this one is it's much heavier. I wish you could feel it, but it's about a good third heavier than the last bow I used.
Wow.
So it just sort of draws out a sound more easily. I don't have to push very hard. It's also a very stiff wood, this particular one, and so it makes for a lot of clarity, which is good for playing Mozart and Haydn, because what the cello part usually does is go all the time. So it's really helpful for that sort of thing. This arrangement of the Mozart, I actually have played it in the viola octave before, last time we did this lecture demo. But since I've had so much going on, I decided to go ahead and do the cello version, which is a bit easier. And I've also made some of my own corrections and changes and arrangements, so just to make it more fun and more celloistic. Should we just check tuning?
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone. Tech there. All right, good.
All right.
This is the last movement in case you said it's a rondo.
Don't remember if I said it or not. Thanks.
I just wanted to say it's so fun to play duets, especially with someone you know and love and play with all the time. We have a quartet together, so with the new Esterhazy Quartet with Anthony Martin and Lisa Weiss. And so we have a lot of opportunities to play together as that group, and it just means that I can clearly follow whatever she wants me to do. Or
I am so lucky.
yeah, I was following her page turn there and realized, oh no, she's not going to make it. So I give a little time. It's always fun to do that sort of thing, which I guess is one of the blessings of being in a pandemic, is you can't have orchestra things, so you can do more chamber music.
Yeah.
Katie and I also do a lot of quartet coachings in our garage with open air and distanced, and so we have a lot of amateur players come by and play quartets, and we'll coach them or play with them, and it's just so much fun. So, we're not completely dying here. So. For our last piece, we're going to play another piece that's not for the cello or for the violin in this case. This is a Beethoven duo in F major. It's not opus 27, it's without opus 27. This is one of the pieces that had no opus number. So without opus 27, number 2 in F major, the first movement. This is Allegro affettuoso.
And originally for oboe and bassoon.
I think clarinet and bassoon, maybe? Yeah, right. Yeah. So again, switch bows here. Keep the same instrument. It does pretty well with this kind of stuff. So I'm going to go to, well, at least for me, I think Katie's going to use that same bow.
I am, yeah.
But I have now an original bow from about 1805, which is probably about exactly when this piece was written.
Right.
This is probably by the great bowmaker Dodd, D-O-D-D. There was a family of them, actually. I'm not sure which one. But it's super extra long. It's about 2 inches longer than a modern style bow, which I also have here just for demonstration. The hair is anyway 2 inches longer.
Amazing.
And the great part about that is that Beethoven and music beyond that, of course, all the way till the 20th century, just requires longer lines and more connected notes generally, and fast notes, of course, as well. But just the music kind of requires a lengthier depth to the phrase. So I think these heavier bows, longer bows really help. If you notice, the tip on this one is almost like a modern tip, very heavy and big. This is yet it's still not quite modern in the sense that the frog is not extra heavy, doesn't have the extra silver pieces on it, the ferrule, and this in fact has its original illegal ivory frog from a dead elephant from 200 years ago, so it's okay now. Otherwise, like on your bow, right? So this Katie's, this is a modern
Turn it around.
this is a remake, a copy of an old bow. And so this frog would be made of probably whale bone or maybe woolly mammoth ivory. Sometimes they dig out the mammoths from the Canadian upper Rockies, and they find some old mammoth bone. So anyway, here's our little last musical performance here. This is, again, the Beethoven duo in F major, first movement.
I think I have to check my E. Oh, excuse me.
Good. Katie, do you want to add anything else to that before we have questions?
Not really.
Yeah. Okay. Um, so maybe Miles, we'll turn it over to you. I mean, I'm sure there's questions.
Woo! The crowd goes wild! Yay! Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. You know, I can't tell you how absolutely refreshing it feels to hear live music being performed, especially from you both that we know and we love. Um, I mean, even on the not so ideal Zoom stage, you both sound absolutely stellar. So thank you so much for sharing your music with us this morning. And my goodness, you certainly have a lot of fans joining. The chat's going wild with, please let them know how thankful we are and compliments to you. So thank you so much for sharing your music. I'm joined by Leila Zakzuk, our development and e-communications manager. We have a few questions that have rolled in. Um, Doug would like to know, what are the advantages and disadvantages of 4 versus 5 cello strings, and why did the world settle on 4?
Right. Well, I think that it was perhaps kind of a novelty to have the five strings, and it was probably created just for a certain performance, certain people that wanted to try it out, and then it kind of caught on. But as music became more complex, let's just say, having the fifth string kind of gets in the way sometimes, unless the music is specifically written for it, like the suite or a lot of the Bach cantata movements call for it. There are a few other composers, I would say, that probably some of the Bach, the French composer, there's some passages that clearly seem like they must have been intended for a five-string cello. Um, but yeah, generally it was more of whatever the top string is, the next string over gets weakened a little bit in sound. So if most of your music you're playing is on the A string, for instance, this one, if you had the E string, that kind of takes away some of the volume of that top string, so and brings it to the E. So yeah, it just became kind of something that gets in the way. Now most players can basically pick one up and play it, the five string that is. The difference is that there has to be a little bit more width between the strings because the bridge has to accommodate five strings, so it's a little more complicated to play. But you'll figure it out really quickly. You know? I hope that answers it.
Of course, yeah. Layla, did you have anything?
Yeah, I have never personally seen one of those super early bows that you started with that don't even have a tightening screw. And I was wondering, if you have trouble finding luthiers you trust to do rehairs or to work on those bows because they're not that common, right?
I'm trying to think whether I have too. I think I have had my early bow repaired, and I think it was probably done. That's yours. Nonetheless, I think this is Bill's bow now, and I see that it needs one.
Oops.
No, but I thought I also, as long as she's getting hers out, I'll just show you what you do. To take it out, you just have to bend the stick carefully, and then you have to take the frog out. You see why, well, my hand was flat enough, you see why they might call it a frog. And it looks like a frog. It was hair, and then you have to flop it back in there.
Yeah, this bow's been repaired, and I think that probably who was it that Brian was in? Yeah, Greenwood. David Greenwood was a bowie here I was using for a while. I think he was the person who did it. And he said it was a little complicated because we're not used to that little ribbon of hair and getting it in with the little plug that they use, yeah, the notch and then the plug. It's a little complicated, but he said it was kind of fun. Cheaper for him because it was fewer hairs he had to buy.
Luckily, the guy who made this lives in the Sierras, so I would send it to him and he'd do it himself. So.
Yeah.
Nice. Another question I had was about, so I feel like in this demonstration we could really hear how using the appropriate instrument makes a big difference. And if you think that performing in kind of historically appropriate venues or for audience sizes that are historically appropriate, if that enhances the music for you.
I think performing for audiences would be a good idea.
You are. You just have. You just can't see them.
The Hospitale in Venice, where you can't see where the girls couldn't see the audience.
Probably for this sort of thing, the duets, playing for each other is probably what the norm. That's what it would have been.
Right.
Maybe for a room, the size of a living room. And we're lucky, of course, Philharmonia is smart enough not to put us into Davies too often, because that would be a little bit too big for us as an orchestra. So,
Right.
I always find it kind of silly. I mean, I love Yo-Yo Ma, but when he goes to play in the 8,000 seat Greek theater and the
Oh yeah,
it's
I know he does the cello suites in the Hollywood Bowl, which is 17,000. So little big.
Let's see. We have. We have someone who got the word, Bill, that you were working on a recording over the last few days.
right. I did hint at that. I think I might know who's asking, but anyway, and I but yeah, it's Katie, lovely Katie has helped raise money for the project for me, and I'm forever thankful for that. And of course, to all the donors out there who've helped. And about 4 years ago, this happened. But in the meantime, I had zero time to record, to actually sit down, rent the halls, and record this music. Took me 6 days. I think the record is 3, but I would do that. And so the pandemic was the perfect opportunity to finally get this project done. which is basically a lifelong goal. It's a bucket list thing to record all the Bach, the 6 suites.
And we had the opportunity to use the sound studio at Skywalker, which was wonderful. And we had Leslie and Molly helping us out, and I got to be consistent with it.
Katie was one of the producers, so she was there to listen, thankfully. But anyway, yeah, it's a huge thing, and it was just done yesterday, so I can't even believe I'm standing up.
Yeah, well, again, thank you for joining us amidst those days, those very long days at Skywalker, and waking up this morning to perform such wonderful music.
Yeah, and now it's on to another 150 hours probably of editing. So
of course, the end is yet to come. I have one final note from our executive director, Courtney Beck, who is in the audience watching along, and she says, "Thank you so much, Bill and Katie, for your beautiful music. And thank you to our many patrons who've joined us today. We miss you and love you." And also, Layla rocks. Okay, so Bill and Katie, thank you again so much. And thanks to all of you who joined us for this event as part of our musical exploration series. As a reminder, our next member event is this Monday at 8 p.m. when we'll be launching our Salon series featuring music by Beethoven and soloists Nick Pon, Muriel Asselin, Tanya Tompkins, Eric Zivian, and David Belkovsky. And next Thursday at 3:30 is our next musical explorations event, when we'll explore the Pau Brazil tree and its role in the craft of bow making over the centuries, with violinist Lisa Groden, cellist Paul Hale, and Zach Candy, Professor Emeritus of Plant Cell Biology at UC Berkeley. So we have a lovely week ahead next week. And a final reminder that you can view all upcoming events and access past content in the Members Lounge on our website. Bill and Katie, again, it's been such a pleasure to hear you. It is so refreshing to hear live music coming from your living room and onto our computers. So I greatly appreciate your presence, and thank you for sharing your lovely music with us. Thanks to my co-host, Layla. And thank you all for joining us, and have a great rest of your week.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks again.